Hello, everyone. Today we are talking to Jessica Ketner. She's a synesthete. Well, how do you say that?
The tough word. It's synesthete. Even I have
Synesthete.
trouble saying
Yeah.
it.
And we are going to talk a little bit about frequencies and aliens and stuff.
But first, I want to say something.
Woo!
Yeah, because just before we asked you, so is there anything you particularly you want to talk about? And you said, no, I just trust that everything that wants to come through me comes through me. And just the other day, I listened to a lady who's not an astrologer. Because we interviewed her too, and she's not an astrologer, but she talks about astrology, and she said the time now is changing into the more feminine aspect where you just let things flow. So you need the masculine aspect to set the framework, and we have that here. We have the summit, it's the frame, and then you just trust that whatever will come through will come through. So I love that. It was like, yes, this is happening. This is where we're going, and it's so much easier. It's not like we're used to. Now it's like, let's just ease into it and see what happens.
I love that. Is it's more like we are, instead of being told how to feel, what to do, what everything should look like, it's more going within, right? That's the feminine intuitive, which is going within more to feel into what is good for you, right? Feel what is the right diet or thing for us to eat, feel what is a good opportunity, or place to move and things. So I love it because now I feel more people are open to different types of intuitive counseling, like channeling or psychic, searching for their own psychic wisdom or their own intuitive wisdom. And it's interesting because we've been doing it for a while when we say things like, that feels good or that sounds good to me. um, I like the way that feels, right? And
Mm.
so it's kind of like, well, what does that mean when we feel something or something sounds good to us? And I believe intuitively all along we have been hearing or feeling or sensing, maybe extraordinarily outside of the normal sensing ranges of frequencies. Um, we hear it. We actually do. We just don't compute it into, an auditory range. And some people do. And I think it's amazing because maybe part of this big global awakening that we're seeing, because we really are seeing more people um, moving into more intuitive fields. We're seeing science moving into merging with some of the more esoteric or metaphysical fields as well. And I think it's just because people are more open to the idea that, hey, this is just as real as, reading a book and having someone who's already had the experience tell me what to do. Now we are the experts, and we can then confirm it by reading materials or having synchronicity come through on the internet or meeting friends or talking to people. So I love it. I really do. And it's interesting that, given with everything that's been going on in the world, that we're seeing the most of this happening in the last, 2 to 3 years. So that's interesting, right?
Yeah, that whole thing about like feeling into it and like maybe hearing it as a distant voice, like we're talking a lot about like vibrations and like having a high vibration or being low or something like that. But humanity as a whole seems to have been very, again, suppressed for many years, and now we are again rising, awakening, we're coming up, so our frequency is coming closer to those levels where we can start to hear more of the messages coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Um so the intuition or like those things, we're getting closer to them, so we can start to like actually hear the messages being told to us and bring them into
Mm-hmm.
this space. And but you've been able to do that your whole life.
Yes, I have. So I was always the odd duck in the family. So my life mission was to come in and completely my whole family line. And they love me dearly, and they'll call me if they have, or they want some advice on something. They'll call me, which is very interesting. Um, yeah, it's I believe that, like most animals on Earth, they're empathic. They communicate without always talking or language or other things. They use feeling, fields of vibration that they feel into. And humans were of the Earth, so we also are empathic by nature too. So we can feel everything that's also going on in the collective. And as a child, I was about, oh goodness, I think my first high strangeness series of events started when I was about 5 years old. And I started to, I didn't understand it at the time. I had to have some older, in my older years, some hypno regression therapy to kind of go back. Because I remember things and in my mind, but they were more like, okay, they must have been from a movie I'd seen, or something, but it was actually really happening. And I would have little visitors come to my room when I was 5, and I just remember being woken up at night, and these little I call them little visitors, and they would just come and they would talk to me. And they didn't have any kind of language or anything. It was all through feeling, through thought, and just sounds like vibrating frequency tones that would come in.
Mhm.
Um, and ever since that moment, or well, as long as I can even remember, I would hear these little frequency tones, shifts and changes of pitches and music. It would sound like a symphonic music, or someone like on a piano, ding, 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 And I didn't really think anything of it. So I would sing as a child. I was always very charismatic, and everywhere we'd go, I would sing. I mean, just probably drove my parents absolutely bonkers, but they were very, very generous and kind to me. And so I did. I would hear these frequencies. And then as I got a little bit older and started realizing, was getting more and more sensitive to everything, and that would be just sounds and people and places. And I had my first real big opening expansion of these tones and frequencies when I was about 11 to 12. And I was in school, and it happened in the middle of a play. I was in a play, and it was like a tunnel vision kind of came over me. And it was just bombardment, bombardment, bombardment. But because I had such a visceral reaction to it, it made it very different from everyone else around me. And that's when I think I started thinking, okay, well, maybe something's not right. Right. And my parents were starting to get worried. So they sent me to doctors and, psychiatrists and therapists and all kinds of things for a long time. So I had to kind of learn that, okay, these are just little tones that I would hear, little music tones. It's not a big deal. Sometimes they would get overwhelming. And then in about 2011, I stopped thinking there was something wrong with me. And it was just that it was a gift. And I was going to sing. And I was going to sing what I'd hear or make music of what I'd hear. I was going to meditate. And I just went on this huge, more spiritual journey. And ever since then, so part of the communication that I have with my team, I call them my A team. They are higher intelligence beings. I'm not exactly sure, the entire mechanics of it. I know there's more to explore with that, but I do get insight messages. Sometimes there's just direct channeling that comes through. I'll hear the tones and frequencies shift and change when I know they're near. And so since 2011, just kind of been on this huge journey, and it's ramping up. Since about 2 years ago, it was like the frequencies, I started hearing higher pitched frequencies, and of the what's going on. And it was just like the entire earth is being flooded right now with a new frequency. new one I haven't heard before. So it's very, very interesting. And it shifts. It's like a constant shift, like a wave that just comes through. And at the highest, it's very high, high pitched. And then sometimes it'll go really, really low, like a whoom, 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 whoom. But it's very interesting to see how people react when the frequencies shift. So I think the gift that I have is that some people will feel the frequencies, they know something's happening, but I can hear them. And I can confirm that, sometimes for people, and it correlates a little
When
bit. Yeah.
when you look at the Schumann resonance,
Hmm.
how does that correlate with what you hear?
Well, so the Schumann resonance is it takes information from the layer D in these are the ionospheres of the Earth. Okay,
Mhm.
so a lot of things happen in layer D, which is pretty close to land. And that's your earthquakes, thunderstorms, electrical storms, and volcanic eruptions. And then, of course, the biggest field, bioelectric field, which is the human heart, right? So we know that that field is massive, and we're almost 8 billion strong now. It's like over 7 billion strong heartbeats. So really, the most intense frequencies that are happening that correlate with the Schumann resonance are the human heartbeat, actually,
Mhm.
and then some thunderstorms, electrical storms, and kind of thrown in there. And then we're also seeing solar activity hitting if it can penetrate through those, top ionospheres into that layer where it can be recorded. And we are seeing a lot of CME activity. I think we had like 8 a couple days ago, class M solar flares, and an X solar flare yesterday. So big deal. When those happen, the frequencies that I hear, they're just off the charts. They're in
Mhm.
a gamma range, and it's just a beep, just a complete steady frequency, and it knocks me. I get dizzy from it. So I've been tested for other things like tinnitus and all those things. So they do show presences there, but they can't explain and have never been able to explain the fluctuating. Um, like the rapid fluctuating of the tones and the music and everything. So I've tried to look at the Schumann resonance. Sometimes I find it correlates. Sometimes I think that the instruments that are being used are monitored as well, so we don't actually get to see a lot of it.
Mm.
But I do feel a lot of like the solar energies that come through, and those aren't always recorded on the Schumann resonance. And either there's a chart in it, or there's a station in Italy, and then Tomsk in Russia. So I do try to follow it, but there is more that we feel than is being recorded or shown. Either way. So we feel it though. We
Yeah,
sense it. Hmm.
yeah.
Absolutely.
We feel it. I remember in 2020 when we had a lot of clients when the lockdown was lifted, and everyone, including us, were just so tired. We
Hmm.
could barely stand up.
Yeah.
Everyone was so tired in periods of time, and then it would shift, and then people would get like normal energy
Yeah.
back, and then so tired again.
Yeah.
It's
So
very
that.
interesting that where you're resonating at. So some people, when they're feeling these higher frequencies, they'll feel very tired. And usually that's the physical body, right?
Mhm.
Any kind of physical body work that's being done tends to make us a little more exhausted. Anything that with the mental, emotional bodies tend to energize us a little bit. So it just depends what you're working on at the time or what's needed. For me, lately, it's been the energizing. I feel like I'm amped up on a battery, really. And, but I've had it where I've just been absolutely just drained, exhausted. And, yeah, so it's so interesting that we're here. And I do personally feel that this is a very active time in our solar cycle anyway. And it's also a time for humanity of waking up. So if you're here right now, You are a trooper, and it's very, very noble to be here on earth as this is happening, because they can be uncomfortable situations, for the body, for the mind, for everything, for civilization as a whole. And that's the whole, staying in the positive frequency, choosing the positive, of the side of the frequency, so that you can try to maintain that feel good um, situation. I believe when we want to shift to the positive, that one of the easiest ways is through gratitude.
Mm.
It's just a frequency that really helps you move into love and that positive frequency a little bit more viscerally, that you can feel. So whenever I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, I'm feeling maybe even some fear kick in, or I'm feeling just a lot, I'll start listing things that I'm grateful for. And they can be little things. I mean, anything I could think of. I'm grateful for my plant, my earrings. I'm grateful for, and then it just goes into the big thing. And next thing I know, I'm crying and releasing all these emotions. But I know that that's, sometimes what has to happen to shift into that positive mindset. Because I've tried everything. I've dealt with anxiety. I've dealt with um, sadness, and all through, through different stages of my life. And the one thing that just gets me always back for me
Mm.
is gratitude. Start listing things I'm thankful for. And sometimes it's not always easy to be in the moment and be like, okay, well, what's the positive, um, way out of this? Or what's the positive way to move into this? Because some situations are really tough, um, and they ask a lot of us. But you've always got something to be grateful for.
But
There's always
sometimes
something.
you have to like, there's also like the healing aspect of having to sit with some
Yes.
of those emotions. So it can be, sometimes it can be quite challenging to know if it's one thing or the other. But like,
Mhm.
I usually like, when, especially when it's not me and it's like Katrina that's doing it, it's feel the emotion, but don't move into it. I said,
Right. Don't live
like you're
there.
making it your house. Like, I've dug this hole, now I'm gonna sit in it forever.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That, I think that's, isn't that like one of the things you learn on your spiritual journey, is that because at first I think we move into this space of everything has to be love and light. Everything has to be positive. Everything has to be you have to be just on it, right? But I think falling off the wagon, sort of say, is the moments where you grow the most. And so I always say, without, and this is actually very true, without darkness you cannot have light. You would not recognize the light without a dark contrast. And so really, if we look at darkness and light, they're just contrast. And in order to contrast something, you have to see both sides. And to move into more positive, you have to sometimes go through, a little bit of that contrast feeling, so that when you feel the positive, you know that that's what it is. And you can, next time, it gets easier and easier to move into it, because you'll know. It's like carving a path through the forest. You'll know
Absolutely.
how to do it. And it overgrows the paths. They overgrow the, everything kind of finds its way sometimes, and you have to just clear it out. But it gets easier because you'll have that memory of being able to do that. um, and I always say that darkness can be a teacher. It's that propulsion aspect where it can truly catapult you. And yeah, I feel for humanity right now, because I know there's so many that are at that, rock bottom place, right, where there's nowhere else to go but, up, if you want to stay on earth. And um, that is sometimes the scariest place to be. But it is, if we could see it as just as a contrast, it's also one of the greatest places to be, because you're unlimited, you know.
But it's just
So just,
the
yeah,
catapult you just said. It's like the catapult has to be pulled down here, because otherwise you can't like get propelled into the future, that where we're going.
yeah,
So seeing that, like, you're being, yes, it feels like being held down and pulled back, but that's the rubber band or whatever that's going to propel you into the bright future that we're all moving towards.
And if you see it as we're here for learning, some people believe that we're here for purposes, and some of the purposes are just to learn. You know, Earth, I've been told, is a mental school. It's a school of mastering the mental reality. So you're manifesting things that are in your reality, right? We're learning how to align to specific frequencies to manifest those, timelines or what we want. And so if you look at it like it's a mental school, if you're becoming a master at something, you have to make mistakes. You have to, you're going to. And so we've got to be so much more easier on ourselves and really like love ourselves for where we're at. And not judge ourselves, when we judge ourselves, then we start judging other people, right? Because if we can't accept where we're at for ourselves, even in our darkest moments, then we are going to have a harder time accepting others. And part of being in this collection or community of souls here on earth and going through this experience is finding zero. So I always zero judgment or 0 point. And I always say there isn't just positive and negative. We're not dealing with just a duality here. If you want to look at it, it's more like a triad. So we have positive, we have negative, and then we have neutral in the middle. So there's 3 states. And the neutral point is where we feel the most expansion, the most creativity. So it's not necessarily always going through the positive, right? Being on the positive, positive, positive. It's being able to balance, in between to get to that 0 point. And in that 0 point, we'll gain the insight, the intuition, all of those things to make more positive moves. Or negative moves. It depends. If we want to go against our intuition and our, nature, then we can go negative. But no, once you get there, can move back into a neutral, and you can choose another positive or, keep going that route. And so I feel like where we're coming towards is more of a neutral state where we can say, okay, here's my options. And that's the master, right? Being able to know that you have those options and you can choose them. And just being in the more positive state is just going to make you feel better. You're going to see more of the things that you feel good about, that expand your heart space, that feel and align with love, because love, gratitude, bliss, joy, hope, peace, they're all frequencies that vibrate on that end of the spectrum, right? Those are the ones that make us feel really, really good. And, and then you have, of course, on the contrasting spectrum. So, truly choosing which spectrum you want to go in, it's your choice, and that's, I think, the best thing is why we're now being called to make the right choices for ourselves, and ourselves alone. And we start making the right choices for ourselves, we start seeing different realities, and we start seeing different reality versions of the people in our lives. We start seeing different reality versions of the world and what's happening in the world. And when you do that, it sends out a frequency wave that's different. So you'll start attracting those realities, those timelines that reflect that, and moving out of some of these really denser fields. But, at the same time, we're doing this as a collective as well. So, yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, let's do the internal work, always the internal work first. And then we see it in the external work. But, we're also moving and shifting as a huge soul collective. It's a huge soul collective. Everyone here on earth. And I always look at it, it's like just big soul family. So if I win, everyone wins. If someone else wins, we all win, even if it's small. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild to think about it that way, that we're here doing our purpose and on an individual level and at the same time as a collective, and still we have to make dinner and get dressed
Right.
and deal with stuff.
Everyone's like, we're moving and we're becoming multidimensional beings. We already are multidimensional beings. That's how we do it. You know, we feed the dog and then we talk to our spiritual guides, all day long. And then we're, praying and or meditating or whatnot. And then we're driving to work, So it's very, very interesting how the thing is we're just remembering, we're starting to awaken more and more people, and it starts with the self first, but once you awaken to the aspect that you are all of these things, um, you see it already, like it's been there all along. So really, I don't know if we're awakening up to anything as much as we are just remembering. It's like the memories are coming back and we're able to just be more and more of ourselves, our true selves.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you just saw, head on over to whoselifeisitsummit.com/podcast, where you can find full-length episodes as well as in audio format, and we do a lot of other cool stuff. You can hang out with us and other like-minded individuals who want to create a world that works for everyone, and we do that on our platform where we can chat, and we have Q&As and exclusive interviews as well. So there's so much to get over there. So come on over and play with us.